Hello, I'm Dr. Nathan Gellert. In this video about motivational interviewing, I'll be talking about exchanging information between the counselor and client. In motivational interviewing, we embrace the paradigm that values the professional expertise of the counselor along with the lifelong expertise that the client brings to treatment. On this level playing field, information is exchanged between the counselor and the client, and the counselor is not seen as the one whose job it is to impart information onto the client. This style of conversation can be more challenging than it might seem at first. Given the fact that we counselors bring real, tangible expertise to the clinical interaction, it's easy to fall into certain traps that hinder the processes of engagement and focusing. Miller and Rollnick highlight 5 specific traps, which are listed on this slide. I'll talk next about each of these and how they can be reframed into client-centered principles that promote collaborative information exchange. The first trap involves the mindset that I am the expert on why and how clients should change. This, of course, is the expert trap, where the counselor adopts the role of the all-knowing problem solver. This approach doesn't work because when personal change is needed, the client needs to be viewed equally as an expert. The counselor simply can't have all the answers. The MI principle to embrace states that I have some expertise and clients are the experts on themselves. When we work from this perspective, we place the counselor and client on equal footing, which is the foundation of collaboration. The next trap involves the mindset that I collect information about problems. This leads to the question-answer trap, where the counselor aims to collect as much information as possible with the hope that information leads to solutions. This approach also assumes that we know what information the client needs. The MI principle to embrace states that I find out what information clients want and need. From this perspective, the counselor and client work together in a collaborative exchange that strengthens engagement and motivation to change. The next trap involves the mindset that I rectify gaps in knowledge. This approach puts the client in a submissive role, with the counselor working to fix something that is wrong with the client. The MI principle to embrace states, I match information to client needs and strengths. From this perspective, the counselor focuses on discovering what the client already knows and enhancing that personal knowledge with the professional knowledge of the counselor. The next trap involves the mindset that frightening information is helpful. We know that information isn't sufficient to cause change. Likewise, frightening information is also insufficient to cause change. Every smoker knows that smoking kills. Reminding a smoker of this fact isn't helpful. In fact, this approach is likely to promote defensiveness and disengagement. The MI principle to embrace states that clients can tell me what kind of information is helpful. This may seem like a novel idea, but for clients it's a powerful experience. Clients appreciate our desire to know what they want and need from us, and they hear information more clearly when they've asked to receive it. The final trap involves the mindset that I just need to tell them clearly what to do. Chances are that most clients have already heard from friends and loved ones what they ought to do. Hearing it again from the counselor is no more likely to foster change. The MI principle to embrace states that advice that champions client needs and autonomy is helpful. From this perspective, the counselor works to learn what information or advice the client seeks, and only then offers it with permission. Let's now discuss a model that you can use to share information in a way that engages the client and respects their autonomy. It is a 3-step model called Elicit-Provide-Elicit. The counselor first elicits the client's permission to share information. This is done in conjunction with clarifying what the client already knows. Remember, telling someone what they already know is likely to foster defensiveness and disengagement. Next, the counselor provides the information. This is done with clarity and parsimony. People less easily hear information when it's complex or confusing. The client is given the autonomy to agree or disagree with the information, and the counselor offers no interpretation about the information. In other words, the information isn't good or bad, it's just information. Finally, the counselor elicits the client's reaction to the information. We seek to understand the client's thoughts and feelings about what they've just heard. Let's consider what this might look like in practice. Imagine a client who wonders if she's suffering from depression. The counselor would first elicit by asking, "I'm wondering what you might already know about depression and your mood." After the client responds and the counselor engages in good reflective listening, the counselor would then elicit permission to give more information by asking, "Could I share some of my professional observations?" I'll let you in on a secret here. Clients never, and I mean never, say no at this point. So, you then proceed to provide the information. This may not exactly fit for you, but people with depression often experience trouble sleeping, loss of appetite, and trouble focusing, just like you've noticed yourself. See how the client is given permission to disagree with the counselor's opinion? That actually helps the client hear the information with less judgment. Finally, the counselor elicits the client's perspective by asking, "What are your thoughts about that?" The counselor and client can then proceed to explore the client's thoughts and feelings and how they might or might not motivate the client towards change. There are 3 special information exchange topics that commonly arise in practice. They are advice, counselor self-disclosure, and assessment and feedback. Let's take a look at each of them. Advice is simply the counselor's opinion about what a client should do. Many clients will seek the advice of their counselor. A natural human impulse would be to offer it because it has been solicited. However, to do so is to deny the client the opportunity to make their own best choice. In essence, advice can diminish a client's self-efficacy. Advice is particularly tricky because many clients look up to the counselor for help. This is the very power imbalance that we want to reject. On the other hand, it is important for the counselor to share professional opinions when appropriate. Thus, all the principles for collaborative information exchange apply when offering advice. Advice will be best received by the client when there is a strong therapeutic alliance, so engagement is a precondition for offering advice. Furthermore, advice will be best heard by the client when the counselor asks permission to give it. When a client consents to receiving advice, they're less likely to respond with defensiveness or disengagement. Because we are in the business of helping people solve their own problems and developing the self-efficacy to no longer need help, advice should be given sparingly. Creating dependency on advice would be the antithesis of a client-centered practice. When advice is offered, always emphasize the client's self-efficacy in deciding what choice to make regarding the advice. Finally, when possible, offer a menu of options rather than a single choice. A single choice is more likely to elicit defensiveness, whereas a list of choices may be more openly explored by the client. Self-disclosure is common in conversations in our daily lives. When we listen to another, we naturally experience our own thoughts and reactions to what's being said. We're used to sharing these things. The counseling relationship is different, however, because the focus is solely on the client's welfare, so we shouldn't share every thought that occurs to us with the client. On the other hand, in motivational interviewing, We also don't embrace the role of the counselor as an aloof, withdrawn presence. As with many things, we embrace balance and a willingness to disclose some things about oneself when it serves the best interest of the client. So how best to find this middle ground? First, only disclose that which is true. There's no reason to make up a story just to demonstrate a point. Also, being genuine means being truthful about our reactions. Clients are likely to detect when we sublimate our reactions to them. Next, consider if the disclosure may be harmful to the client. If there is even a remote chance that it might be harmful, then err on the side of caution and don't disclose. Finally, ask yourself if there is a clear way the information will benefit the client. Unlike in close friendships, self-disclosure should not be used simply to build and deepen the relationship. Miller and Rollnick offer several examples of helpful reasons to self-disclose. They include to promote trust and engagement, to model openness and encourage reciprocity of disclosure, to answer a client's question, and finally, to affirm. Assessments are primarily about gathering information, but the counselor must be careful not to fall into the question-answer trap, which discourages engagement. Before beginning a formal assessment, it's beneficial to engage in at least 10 minutes of MI-adherent conversation with the client. You might prepare the client for intake questions by stating, "As you might imagine, there are some intake questions I need to ask. But first, it's important to me to hear from you about what brings you in and how I might be able to help." Clients will often have reactions to our questions or the assessment process in general. These thoughts and reactions are often clinically relevant. Asking for them also promotes engagement and collaboration. So, after a period of assessment, you might say, "Those are all my questions. What came up for you as we were talking?" Furthermore, assessment should be followed by offering honest feedback to the client. We wouldn't stand for a medical doctor who didn't share the results of a biopsy, would we? When you have the results of a formal assessment, use the Elicit-Provide-Elicit model to share the results with a client. Thanks for joining me for this video. In the next video, I'll talk about ambivalence and the concepts of sustained talk and change talk. Please click the subscribe button to receive notifications when new videos are published. And if you've enjoyed this video, please click the like button to support my work.